Hello, in this video I'll talk about setting ground rules and expectations for AI use in your classes. So uh, this is important for pretty much every instructor and every course, but I think especially if you have school issued access to generative AI tools, many students will likely see this as a blanket seal of approval on the use of generative AI in teaching and learning, when in reality each instructor, each course, student will have different views on what's appropriate and what's not. And what's obvious to one person isn't always obvious to another. And so you might think something is obviously wrong or cheating, but students might not see it that way. So it's good to be clear on all this. So three general approaches to generative AI in classes is teaching against, trying to ban it, teaching around, trying to have AI resistant assignments, or teaching with, actively incorporating and encouraging students to use it. Please take a look at this blog post from Michael Hernandez here at UChicago. I'll have a link to that. In reality, keep in mind, one course might have all three of these approaches at different times, and it's just good to be clear on what you're expecting and when. So some common views against teaching against. These tools are out there, and students and professionals are using them in the real world, and we're trying to prepare students for the real world. At the same time, we're also trying to help students learn how to learn and think, and sometimes there can be some conflict there. Their use can be hard to detect, especially by skilled users. So if students are good at using these tools, it's hard or impossible to know when they're using it. So 100% bans are unenforceable, and you becoming a police officer trying to sniff out every use of these tools can be counterproductive. I would also say these tools are not entirely bad. Yes, they can be used to short circuit learning and thinking and doing the work of these courses, but they can also be beneficial to teaching and learning when used appropriately. And so appropriate use, defining appropriate use is the big challenge, right? Generally, submitting AI-generated content as one's own is generally seen as a violation of most academic integrity policies, of learning goals, of teacher-student relationships, as I've said in another video. So for UChicago, our academic honesty and plagiarism policy, you can pause this video and read this, but you'll see that there's nothing explicit here about AI. And so there's a lot of gray area, a lot of things that are open to interpretation. It does say any doubts what constitute use should be addressed to the instructor, meaning students should be proactive about asking these questions before they do it, right? I would say that instructors should set clear expectations and ground rules about the use of generative AI before the course begins. I think we can't expect students to follow rules that they haven't been told about. And these expectations should include a rationale for why your policy is this way, and specific examples of what is appropriate and what's not on different types of assignments. You could also have a general policy, but have different instructions for different assignments. So you might say something like, unless the assignment instructions state otherwise in this course, this is the expectations. I've created a sample statement on the use of generative AI in language courses. This is intended to be a concrete example of what a policy and rationale could look like. This section here is some important disclaimers and things. Basically it says you're free to use any or all of this in your syllabus or other communications, but it's up to you to make sure it accurately reflects your intentions. So this is that kind of disclaimer section, and then this is the beginning of the sample statement. At the bottom of that document, it has a table like this where instructors can put in different types of assignments and then put in examples of what it would be acceptable or appropriate and what would be unacceptable and inappropriate. I think this is a great opportunity to have this discussion with your students, where you work with them to discuss what's appropriate and set expectations together. So if your blanket policy is something like, you can use generative AI to help you learn and improve your language, but you cannot use it to do the assignments for you, you could look at these types of assignments or other assignments from your courses and ask students, what are some ways that AI could be used on these assignments, and then work together to put them in the acceptable or unacceptable columns. I think it's also good to just ask students generally, what are some ways you use AI for schoolwork or for language learning? I think you'll learn a lot of interesting uses, and it just kind of helps to set the table of it not being saying AI is not a bad word. There's just bad uses of it, right? So disclosing the use of AI, some instructors might say something like, if you use generative AI on this assignment, briefly describe how you used it. Again, this signals that these tools are not bad, and I think it encourages thoughtful and transparent use by students. I would recommend avoiding de facto bans. For example, if an instructor says, if you use AI in any way, you must tell me the tool, the version, the prompt, the output. I think in situations like this, if it's too much for students, if they view it as too much work, not worth it, then I think students either won't use it at all, or they'll use it without disclosing it. And so I think just it can be counterproductive again. I think it's also good to be clear about how you, as the teacher, will or will not be using generative AI and why. Will you use it potentially to generate materials or tasks? Maybe. Will you use it to assign grades? Probably not. I hope not right now. And so you could say something like, I'll be using AI to assist my teaching, but I'm the one making the decisions. Again, this is consistent with what we're asking of students, right? And you could say, you wouldn't want AI teaching you, and I don't want to grade assignments written by AI. So some final thoughts on gaining buy-in and avoiding creating a police state where you're constantly trying to, fight this issue all the time. I think most students want to learn and don't want to cheat. So I think laying out clear expectations and the rationale behind them, I think working with students to kind of try to set some of this policy together, having some grace with students and understanding that right now the general policies are unclear. We're telling students, here are these tools, and so there's not a whole bunch of kind of guidance out there right now from what I've seen, and so just understanding that they need this kind of expectations from you right now. Hopefully, there's going to be a connection between the assignments and skill development and the grades students are getting, right? So if they want to get good grades in the course, they'll see that doing the assignments will help them with that, I think. If students can pass a language course while outsourcing all the homework to ChatGPT, then I think, yes, students shouldn't be doing that, but also there should be more kind of skill development involved in the course. So proficiency, if you're using proficiency-oriented assessment and helping students see how, for example, oral proficiency interviews or the 4 skills proficiency tests that we develop here in our Office of Language Assessment, helping students see that the assignments you're having them do helps them develop their language skill, which in the end helps them get a better grade, right? And how using AI for assignments will short-circuit all of this. All right, thank you so much.